All right, so we're good. Kelly, it's Ryan.
Yes.
How are you?
Hey, I'm good.
Kelly,
How are you?
what's your last name and tell us where you're working.
Kelly.monk. My last name is Monk. I work with Coldwell Banker Preferred in Center City.
Okay.
Um, I've been there about 2 years. I was with a very small company that grew for about 12 years. I needed to kickstart my business. I went to Berkshire Hathaway, which is a huge company.
Mhm.
And then I found myself at Coldwell Banker, which is like Philadelphia, a big company with a small town feel, which is exactly what I love about it.
That's awesome. I've never heard anybody say that before. How long you been in the industry?
Um, Off and on, well, part-time since 2004. You know, I wanted to get into real estate in 87, but
Okay.
interest rates were, I think, 12%. That's when I bought my first house. And because I am not, I'm not a hardcore salesperson. I enjoy the business, but when interest rates are 8.7, you kind of have to be a hardcore salesperson.
Let
So
alone
I,
12%.
right. So I actually did a whole different career. And in 2004, I had a business in Old City. And at that point, Old City was, actually it was like 2000, was doing a resurgence. There was a lot of development going on. Interest rates were low. There was a lot of rehabbers going on, and a lot of people from New York starting to flood the city. And I'm thinking, I sat in my store giving out all kinds of information. I should really take advantage of that and get back into the business. So I got my license in 2004.
That's
And
awesome.
I've been doing it part-time since then, some years more than others, depending on what's going on in my other business. But now I'm flipping, doing more real estate and a little bit of my other business, which is also home related. It's design, interior, textiles, bedding, bath, all that stuff. I am all things home. I'm a homebody and I love being in my home, and I think everybody should have a home for a multitude of reasons. It's where you start your day, it's where you gather your energy, it's where you plant yourself, it's grounding, and I believe everyone should have one.
I think that's awesome, especially because, when you make a purchase of buying a house, it's a huge purchase.
Mm-hmm.
And why not, you're given, essentially to me, all homes start as a shell. What you do with that shell that
Mm-hmm.
makes it feel more comfortable, more cozy, a place that, especially through a pandemic, do you want to be stuck in that house?
Right.
And I think customizing the house, and I'm sure that there's ways where you can customize your house where you don't have to spend thousands of dollars.
Absolutely.
That's an awesome thing to be able to do, and an awesome, side business, side hustle, or conjunction business. I think that's awesome.
Right. I say you buy a house and then you make it a home. So
That's
that's
that's a
basically
great
what,
line.
yeah.
I'm gonna put that for you. Buy
And
a house, make it home. That's
it's
awesome.
interesting. My concept of the home, they say that it's not an investment because you're not actually making money on it, but I consider it a huge investment because done right and given the good circumstances, certain circumstances, it is a investment. I bought my house 26 years ago, and I have made money. Doesn't always happen, but I would say if you know what you're doing, and if you're working with a good agent,
I was going to
um,
literally segue right into that. I think a lot
yeah,
has to come with a good agent.
yeah, 9 times out of 10, if the world continues in a progressive, outside of catastrophes, you are making an investment.
Well, I think it's interesting that, you're even still doing real estate, because there's a lot of realtors that got in the early 2000s, and 2005 to 2006 boom, and then 2007, 2008 happened. And I talked to realtors that at that point in time, they've been doing real estate for 20 years and they couldn't stay afloat. And so the fact that you're still doing it, and I mean, now we're in a crazy time where things should not be as they are, but they're booming it's like, I always say it's like the Black Friday of interest rates right now.
Mm,
Everybody and their brother's trying to grab an interest rate because rates are so low
right.
that it's bottlenecking the industry. I mean, from a purchase standpoint, everything's backed up. What usually we can do in 2.5, 3 weeks is now taking us 45 days. And
Everything's taking longer. Everything.
appraisals are taking longer, title searches are taking
Uh,
longer,
mhm,
and it's crazy. But I mean, it's awesome. So you've been through, you kind of got started when it was high,
mhm,
survived the crash in 2007,
mhm.
2008, and now you're riding high again. Like you've kind of seen it all. So that's pretty awesome.
I think it's the motivation. I think it's what you're in the business for. I
Sure.
mean, as much as I like my money as much as the rest of the world, but my motivation is getting people in homes. It's home ownership, and it's funny that now after this pandemic, um, in both of my businesses, I am hearing, especially in advertising, all of the things that I've been saying forever about, make your home your, first get a home and how important it is. And, home ownership, especially with all the racial things going on about, you know, opportunities in having a home. Those are things that I've believed in, that I was raised with. And in terms of making your home comfortable and, making it an oasis, those are things I've been talking about forever. So as the world changes and the economy changes, I haven't changed. And what I work for hasn't changed, if that makes sense.
I mean, yeah, I mean, maybe you haven't changed, but I would say you've probably grown because to think about
Hmm.
it, when you bought your first house, and this is what I think many people don't, many people see, it's really weird. Many people see the success, but they don't see the work that's required to get to that successful point. A
Hmm.
lot of people think buying a house is really hard. And with a good agent and or a good mortgage person that can guide them and educate them along the way,
Hmm.
I think we could bridge that gap between thinking this is unachievable and this is so much
Right.
work and say, no, we can take
Right.
you from right here. Sorry. We can take you from right here and we're going to pave the path. We're going to show you the steps and
Right.
get you to here. When you bought
Right.
your first house, how excited were you? Like, what did that do for you in your life?
It's interesting because I've had two homes in my life, and for all different reasons. So the very first home was a Trinity, and I bought it with my mother as an investment. I was going to school, so we bought it together. For her, it was an investment, and for me, it was a home. So I lived there, paid the rent, which was the mortgage, and it just worked out for everybody. So, especially for college students coming into Philadelphia, there is a place for that kind of a home as an investment, which I was talking about before. Homes can be investments also.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, it was an amazing feeling to have something of mine. Um, and then my second home, again, you buy it because that's what you do. You get married, you buy a home. But in that decision, there's a lot of things that go into it. Where do you want to live, schools, and, all the things that go into that decision at that moment. And then, of course, if you're working with a good agent, somebody who thinks in the future, you're thinking about what happens next.
Right.
You're thinking, the client is thinking about this moment, what's happening now, but um, the agent should be thinking about what is going to serve them at this moment and think a little bit about the future. So long term, what is it they say people stay in their homes 5 years average?
5 to 7, the average
Five
one.
to 7 years. So that's fast.
Really?
You know what I mean? 7 years. So to be able to think that is, think in the future as well as in the present is very interesting.
I think it's also interesting when you said that a home is an investment. What I have found, especially again, I'm always going to bring it back to the pandemic, is
Hmm.
that I found that not only is it a financial investment,
Hmm.
it's an emotional and psychological investment. When you
Hmm.
enjoy coming home and you enjoy your neighborhood, for
Hmm.
the first couple of weeks, it was like we didn't like we thought, okay, we're on lockdown, like we can't leave. It was a very, I wouldn't say emotionally scary, but it was a very unknown feeling.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I remember thinking, I really love where I live. Like if I was stuck here, I
Right.
have plenty of space to walk. I have
Right.
plenty of things close enough that I can get. I love my neighbors. I love my neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Psychologically and emotionally, it's like if
Mm-hmm.
I'm stuck here, I'm okay with that.
Right.
And I know that we've had a lot of people, which is unfortunate, but we've had a lot of clients who have contacted us, whether it was people that have followed us or people that have found us through our marketing and advertising. They've said, hey, I don't like where I live. I don't feel comfortable. Can you please help me get out?
Right.
That's where a relationship with somebody like you, where you believe in education and we believe in education,
Mm-hmm.
and especially in times of turmoil, racism, pandemic, all this stuff, people need that beacon of light. And that's what we try to do. We try to
Right.
say, hey, we all want the same thing. We're really
Mm-hmm.
not that different. Here's
Mm-hmm.
my hand. Give me your hand. Let's work together and we'll
Right.
achieve that.
Right.
And it's been amazing, some of the relationships that while some people are doing this, we're
Right.
doing this.
Right.
And it's
Which is, I'm sorry, but that is like such a huge point because trust and working together is huge in this business between the mortgage person and the realtor and the client. Everybody needs to work together the whole time, and trust is huge because, first of all, you have all of their personal information. I need that information. So when I get a client who isn't talking to me or giving me what I need in order to teach them how to move forward, it becomes a problem.
sure.
So you can't really clog that wheel. That wheel needs to be fluid between the agent, the mortgage person, and the client
Yep.
in order to really serve them, which is what our goal is.
I agree. I mean, it does come down to trust. I have to be able to trust you. You have to trust. I mean, really, it comes down to
Mm-hmm.
first, the client has to trust that we are going to respect their personal information and that we're
Mm-hmm.
going to help advise them the best way possible.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to trust that I've done my due diligence in making
Mm-hmm.
sure they actually are qualified,
Right.
making sure they actually can afford to buy whatever parameters house that we discuss,
Right.
and that you're not wasting your time, because how many times do people go, they put a house under contract and they find out they don't qualify? That's
Right.
our fault. That's
Right.
our responsibility.
And
And
I
we take a lot of responsibility in that. I'm assuming you've seen that a lot.
a lot, and I particularly like how you do it. Your company does it in terms of I mean, you explain the steps, but it makes so much sense because generally, I see a client, do you have a pre-approval? They have a pre-approval based on the conversation,
Hmm.
but that conversation could be wishful conversation. It could be a person who thinks, I know what I bring in. I kind of know what I owe. How much do people really dig into that? So I get a client who says, "Oh, I'm looking for a house in the the $300,000 range," and they have a pre-approval. But when it gets down to it, when you find that house and you do a little bit more digging, they're not approved for that property. So your process makes so much more sense. It's so much clearer, and it allows you to keep moving. So I appreciate that.
And thanks for the feedback. And for those of you that watch this, to explain a little bit about what Kelly's saying, there's a lot of times we'll get phone calls, especially in the last 3 to 6 months. We've gotten phone calls from realtors saying, hey, I'm a selling realtor and I'm calling to find out I got this pre-approval. Is this person actually qualified? And so what Kelly's talking about with premium mortgage, what we do is the first thing we do is we run what's called a soft fact finder. And that's basically us asking questions. Okay, tell us a little bit about your situation. Are you buying by yourself or are you buying with somebody else? What's your credit look like currently? What is your gross monthly income? Gross monthly income, and we specify that. What is the gross monthly income? What kind of expenses do you have? Do you have a car payment? Do you have student loans? Do you have credit card debt? Do you have a personal loan? That quick conversation all happens in about 7 minutes. And what we found not most, I'm going to say a lot because I don't want anybody to say, oh, don't accuse me. A lot, and consumers tell us this, is they will say, give me your name, your address, your social. I'm going to run your credit. I'll call you back. And then it's pass or fail. If they pass with a qualifying credit score, they get a call back and they're like, great, give me your docs. So they send out a pre-approval, let's go. But that's it. They don't, if they fail, a lot of times they won't even call them back. They won't even say, hey, guess what, John? Or hey, guess what, Mary? You don't qualify today. But this is what you need to do in order to qualify. Our process is we run the soft fact finder that tells me theoretically, would you qualify or not? And if it's iffy, we may ask a few more detailed questions. If we think you would qualify, And at that point, if the borrower feels comfortable with us, then we pull their credit, because pulling the credit is going to really tell me what the banks and lenders are going to look at. So based on the income you tell me, if that works, I pull your credit, those numbers match up, and you don't have heavy disputes, you don't have heavy collections or charge-offs or bankruptcies or anything like that. Then we say, great, send us now your docs, your income, proving that you make what you say you make, which includes your pay stubs as well as W-2s. If you're self-employed or a 1099 employee, we need your tax returns. Then we ask you for bank statements to make sure you have enough funds for your down payment and your closing cost. And then lastly, we have to get the, no, that's really it. It's income, assets, and then W-2s or banks or tax returns. Once we have those three things, then we can validate, and then we do what's called desktop underwriting. That's where our girls run desktop underwriting to make sure that if we put this whole scenario into the platform, would you be approved or would you get denied, and what for? And so, yes, we do all of that before they ever get to you, because we don't want to waste your time. Plus, we don't want to put a pre-approval that's not legit. And we're seeing a lot of that, unfortunately.
Right.
So
Right.
I appreciate, I'm glad that that helps you and puts a little confidence, in your arms there.
Absolutely.
So
So,
go ahead.
no, I was going to say that that whole process also shows me and you. A lot of people want a house. Everyone wants a house, but if you're willing to do the work and you say, I need this, and you get it to them, and I see that a client is willing to do what's necessary, then that makes me want to work harder for them.
Absolutely.
So that's why I appreciate your system, because again, after the softball, I don't require people to have a pre-approval the first time I take them out, because the first time I take somebody out, at a certain point they're interviewing me and I'm interviewing them, because I want to help people, but I can only help people who are helping themselves at the same time. And there are a lot of people out there, and I can use what I have best when they're wanting to work with me.
Sure.
So again, it's about that relationship, and it's the same with you. You say, okay, you tell me this, but now I need this. And of course, you're not expecting it that next day, but people have to live, but they're moving forward, giving you what you need. Because why would I put my time into somebody who's not doing their part when I can be putting it into two people who are?
Sometimes I get that stuff in 10 minutes and I'm like, whoa, you're really ready.
Right. And that makes me more motivated and makes me want to do more for them at the same time. Again, all about that relationship.
So tell me, if you're working with somebody if you had a perfect avatar of your client that you feel you work best with, right? Let's say maybe it's an area, is it first-time home buyers? If you were to describe your type of client, maybe it's sellers, what is your ideal client that you feel you've had the best success with, that if you could find that person right now, if somebody's watching this right now, or tonight or tomorrow, whatever it is, if they're watching this, who would you say based on your history, you have the best ability to help? And it may be more than one type of client, but in your experience, what you've seen, what's the best client for you?
Basically what I just said, somebody who wants it,
Okay.
Who's willing to do the work, who listens, trusts, and wants to learn.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if it's a first-time home buyer. It doesn't matter if it's a seller who's been in their home for 1,000,000 years. If you're listening, because the whole process, I'm showing you what I'm doing.
Sure.
And if you're interested in that, because it's in your best interest to be, then we can keep moving forward. So I have a first-time home buyer. You're explaining the process to them. You're explaining the end result, what it's going to look like when you're sitting at the table, so they have an idea of what's going on or what it's going to happen. And then the whole way you're explaining, so, okay, you're looking in this neighborhood and this is what I'm seeing. I want $150,000. Personally, house. I usually go a little higher and a little lower, and then they see what's going on in the market. So I'm explaining to them what I'm doing, and my ideal client is someone who's as interested, because it's not for me. It's for you. And that also builds that trust.
Sure. I think that's important because, like you said, if they don't show that interest, unfortunately, a lot of people, and we see it all the time, people will call us and say, yeah, I want to buy a house. And one of my favorite questions which I ask a lot of times before I even start. It's actually my first question on the fact finder.
Mm.
And depending on the person, I know to or not to ask it. But my first question is always why? Why do you want to buy a house? What is your motivating factor? What is the underlying reason? Tell me why you're motivated to buy a house. And depending on that answer, 9 out of 10 times, I know how serious that person is. Because when they say, I have a 2-year-old kid and I want to help them, grow up in a house and I want to create memories in a home and a safe neighborhood and all this other stuff, I know that person is mentally checked in.
Right.
Other people are just like, well, I just want to buy a house.
Right.
And it's like, I feel that person, not that they're not serious, but more times than not, that person's not as motivated as someone who's like, no, I want to create a home. Like you said, buy a house to create a home
Right.
for my children to grow up and to create the memories. And sometimes it may just be a starter home,
Mm-hmm.
but at least start there. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's really awesome. Now, you said your office is in Center City. Is that where your primary focus is?
No, I do a lot in Center City. I've been in the city for 30 years, and
Okay.
I've lived in not every section. I've either lived and worked in every little neighborhood in Center City. But I love pretty much every neighborhood. I love up in Mount Airy. I love down in South Philly. I love the art museum. So I know a lot about the different neighborhoods
Okay.
because I've either worked or lived there. So I go where the client wants to go. If I don't know that neighborhood, which usually outside of the city, then I find an agent who does. So I'm working with a client now who lives in Elkins Park,
Okay.
and they're downsizing a little bit, kind of retire in the Elkins Park area. But then they started going up further higher north. And I'm like, okay, I don't know that neighborhood. I'm going to refer somebody. So I set up an appointment for them to see somebody up there. And they're actually working with them now. If they decide to come back down, if they don't see anything, then I pick them up again. So my neighborhood where I work is far and wide. But if I'm not comfortable or familiar with it, I pass it on.
See, that speaks volumes for you. And it's kind of like us here. We have, some people that they'll be looking for a particular type of loan. Especially like if it's an investment loan. Depending on the investor loans, we don't always do those. We primarily focus on if you are purchasing a residential property or if you're buying a house. Let's say you're buying a house, it's going to be owner occupied where maybe there's 2 units or 3 units and you're going to live in one of those. We specialize in that stuff. Investor loans and stuff like that, that's not our niche. That's not where we, put most of our focus on. So I think it's important that you said, my focus is on the city of Philadelphia and maybe the immediate outlying areas.
Right.
Anything pushing those boundaries, I think it's smart. You're doing a good job for your clients by being honest and saying, I don't know those markets as well. But if you niche down and you know your markets that well, that's a huge bonus. It's just like with us with qualifying. We know the number one factor to qualify is credit. Credit is the entry point into the game. So when you know what you know best, and you know what's going to help your clients the best, you specifically know you can help them. Some people who are really educated and they get it, they don't want to hear that jargon and stuff like that. And I have some people that make a lot of money and they don't have good credit. And I try to tell them, like, I don't care. I make enough money. And they'll be blunt about it. It's like, okay, you're wasting money and interest from simple disciplines, but you understanding and knowing your client and what you do best, I think that that's really awesome. Would you say, with regards to the city versus outside of the city, what would you recommend your clients do? What we find is people don't realize the taxes.
That's a big one.
Tax your property or your buying power. Even if like we have a lot of clients that they'll be looking in parts of Philadelphia and they'll say, or I'll look in Upper Darby or what's another section? There's another section right over there. And it's like, it's across the street essentially.
Montgomery County versus Philadelphia County. One Cheltenham,
Yeah,
it
exactly.
makes a huge difference. Yeah. It's funny.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm actually working with a client now who she was looking in Elkins Park because she wants a nice little house with outdoor space for her kids. And the price point is in the $275 range, but the taxes are $6,000-$7,000 a year. So when I do a really quick breakdown about what she wants to pay a month, We ended up being in the Philadelphia area, so we're working in West Mount Airy, East Oak Lane, because that house price point versus the taxes, she can afford the monthly. I'm also getting a lot of calls from people looking at condos. And there's this 1-2-bedroom beautiful condo for $149,000 in Elkins Park. They don't see that the condo fees are $1,200 a month.
Plus the
So,
taxes.
and not to mention the taxes, yes. So, again, educating them on it's not just the price of the house. You have to kind of look a little bit further. So when I, again, start working with somebody and they're out on their own looking, I give them a list of these are the things you want to look at when you're looking. Not just the price of the house and the number of bedrooms, which is very important, but also the lot size of the house, and then also the taxes of the house, the condo fees of the house, if there's, anything else associated, so that they have a better picture.
Sure.
So they're not going to see something and fall in love and then not be able to afford it.
Gotcha. I think that's great. Trying to be conscious of time here. I mean, is there anything else? I have one last thing that I want to ask you and kind of bring up. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about, or any questions that you had for me from the mortgage side, or even the credit and budgeting, like financial side? Is there anything, because you mentioned education earlier, is there anything from us that we could particularly give to you? Do you have any questions for me?
I think your system is so thorough. And I think the stages in that you do it, the soft pull, the income verification, work so well that I happily take on clients that started with you because I feel confident moving forward in the process.
Awesome.
So questions, not really. Keep doing what you're doing
I
because
appreciate
it
that.
works. It works.
I appreciate that tremendously. So my last question for you is, given, the craziness of the world today, and what we try to do is really be a resource of information. One of the things that we hear a lot is that, the education isn't there. Is there anything more that we can do to deliver value to communities, maybe some communities in the city of Philadelphia specifically, that we could offer to bridge the gap? And I don't, with what's going on, I don't even know sometimes if it's more of like a racial tension, if it's an income tension, but what can we do through all this chaos? Do you feel that Premium Mortgage, Ryan Alexander, Kelly and Ryan working together, what do you feel we could possibly do to bring to society to bridge the gap, to end some of the nonsense and say, hey, we're all here trying to live the good life. Let's just work together to do that. Is there anything you feel we could do?
I think education is number one. I don't know how to reach people to educate them. I mean, if you're not looking for a house and looking at mortgage companies, how do you show people that it's possible to find a home? Somebody who doesn't have a lot of income works really hard, is especially looking for rentals. You're looking for a $1,200 rental with a 3-bedroom, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you could buy a house. It would, and not everybody, but there are certain people, it's in their best interest to not think rental and to think purchase. So reaching out to people or talking to people, I don't know what you're doing now.
So we sort of know, and that's what we're doing right now. What we're doing right now is going to be aired on Facebook and we're on Instagram. YouTube, we're going to put it on YouTube. So we're sort of doing it right now. But if you think this right here is what we need to do, and the educational pieces, I encourage you to put me to work and say, Ryan, whether we have to do more of this, whether we come down and do a seminar, or maybe we come and do a seminar together where we're both sitting next to each other versus, looking at each other.
Right.
I think that, I'm all for that. So I'm happy to help in any way that we can. And please continue to think. I'm sure after we do this, now I'm putting you on the spot, but after this video,
it'll all come up. Call you back.
You said things will come to you afterwards. So please, as you see fit, any ways that Premium Mortgage can plug into helping the community, pulling people, out of their current belief system. It's always about current situation, desired situation. Most people think this isn't possible or feasible. And we want to say, no, we are. one of the promises I always say is I'm going to take your hand and I'm going to hold it all the way from application
Mm-hmm.
to settlement.
Mm-hmm.
That way you never have to feel that you're alone in the process, and you never have to feel overwhelmed. If you look at all the steps in the process, you may say, oh my gosh, I can't handle that. But if I say, no, you just focus on the first step. Let's get to this first step,
Right.
and then we'll focus on the second step. And each time we're going to tell you how to get to those steps. And sometimes that's going to be Premium Mortgage helping you get from step to step. And sometimes that's going to be Kelly Monk that's going to say, I got it. We're going to help you. And then at the end, we're both going to be holding their hands on both sides.
Right, right. One last thing, actually, that just came to me. The relationship, and it doesn't really end there. They sign this paper, they get the keys. My relationship doesn't end there. So if people have questions about their property, and I'm not saying, oh, my toilet doesn't work, that kind of question, but I keep the door open for next steps, because life changes. And I think that's important for the mortgage person as well, to keep that door open. The callback, when the interest rates go from 8 to 4, you call them, or be available for people to say, okay, is this the right time? Should I refinance? Or, I'm thinking of upgrading. Can I do that? Keeping the relationship beyond the end of that one transaction, I think, is as important, because also, it's a lot of people who haven't had a home or grew up with somebody who owned a home. So they grew up in a rental. So it's a very different thing because it's yours. You're going to treat it differently. And sometimes, people need a little help.
Yeah.
So it's just being available.
Well, I agree 100%. I think people are afraid to ask for that little bit of help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And again, a lot of it comes down to mentality and beliefs. And we want to inspire people to say, if you want change, and like you said in the beginning, if you're willing to do the work, we will show you the way. And obviously we can see your passion. That's why you're doing this. You're taking time out of your busy schedule to do this. And we appreciate you sharing your insights and everything. And we're excited to work with you. So how can people reach you? Where can people best find you?
Coldwell Banker Preferred, kelly.monk at CBPref. Where else?
.com.
.com, yes. I don't do this thing often.
What's the phone?
I live by my cell phone number. It's 215-605-0785, and I answer it. Sometimes that's a pain because half those calls, but I answer it. I have to answer it. So yeah.
Awesome. Well,
but
Kelly,
the website as well.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you. This has been great.
Yeah, I mean, guys, ladies, gentlemen, anybody old, young, I don't care if you're buying your third house or you're buying your first house. Please, if you want help, if you want to learn more, if you want to do more, call us. I mean, obviously, call Kelly. You can call. My name is Ryan at Premium Mortgage, 215-396-9370. We're here to help you. This isn't because Kelly and I want to watch ourselves talk to each other. We want to inspire people to say, if you want change, be the change that you want to see. And we are that change. We are putting ourselves out there to help educate you, to help hold your hand, whatever the case may be, or maybe just to help you find the best real estate transaction you can find, or the best interest rate with the best closing costs. Just give us a call, send us a message. We are here to help you. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And looking forward to doing another deal with you.
Until next time.
Have yourself an awesome day, Kelly. Thanks so much.
Do the same. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.